pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks for being here tonight, everybody. Looking at changes to the agenda, and if we don't have any changes, we would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as printed.
I'll make that motion.
One second.
We have a motion by Robin, second by Rick to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Agenda is approved. Guests in open forum, is there anybody here tonight to address the city council? All right, we will move on to number 6, committee reports, presentations, and awards. EDA is up first.
EDA met on Monday, January 12th. Our main issue that night was the housing study RFP, and that's on our agenda, item 7C tonight. And we also had a monthly market update, 20 homes for sale in the zip code, 4 sold in the last 30 days. That is all I have.
All right, any questions for Robin? We will move on to Budget and Finance Committee.
Budget and Finance met last Thursday, the 15th. We talked about the Edgewood Drive reconstruction and looked at the financing options. That is also on our agenda tonight, 7B. We talked about the Luann Drive development. That's in our exec session tonight. We reviewed our investments and reviewed past due utilities, 60 days plus at about $16,500, and we reviewed all the standard financials.
All right, any questions for Robin on Budget and Finance? If not, we'll move on to Public Works Committee.
Public Works, we met last Wednesday. The Street and Parks Supervisor candidate has been accepted. It's on our agenda tonight. Street improvement projects, Edgewood, that's there again, it's on our agenda tonight. Wastewater, the water system evaluation report, Chris will be bringing that up in the exec session, I believe. And Phil will be bringing up the streets and also the right of use. Is that what it's called, Phil? Okay, that's it.
Okay, any questions for Mike? We'll move on to Police Management Committee.
Police Management, we met last Friday, 0700 for anybody wants to come in early. That's how we roll. We had a staffing update. Running a little thin on staff right now with between the hiring of the positions later this year, and then we have one on medical leave right now. We're not serving, but it's harder for officers to get PTO and stuff. So, but obviously we still have coverage. So, the community engagement that the chief had here recently, we just had an update on that. That went over well. Let's see, we talked a little bit about some quotes for the radio coverage. Some of the for the police department radios, there's some coverage gaps within here. So talked about getting some quotes to have some folks come out for that. We also talked about the emergency response, like a JPA. That's needed. It's kind of the county's call it a version of a SWAT. Is probably the easiest way to think of it. So, but they do require a separate JPA in order to do that. So we looked at that. We had some other just discussion items, and then as far as we talked also about the possibly amendment to the fee schedule coming up too. And then statistics slightly down from last year. Still really close, but slightly down from last year so far. And then just our meeting schedule, just looking to possibly move to an every other month, meeting, just because, we've had, just so we don't have, right now we're meeting quarterly, and, we can get a lot of items on there, so just talking about moving to every other month so we can get, a little bit shorter agendas, so. That's about it.
All right, any questions for Rick on police management? All right, we'll move on to number 7, board committee and consultant reports. Up first, Mr. Knutson with the property right of entry transfer and maintenance agreement, resolution 2607.
That was good timing. I was able to make it up here. So
I like that.
we gotta have those long titles. Good evening, Mayor and Council. In front of you tonight, we've got a resolution that we're looking for to grant us right of entry, transfer and maintenance agreement with Jimmy and Dana Williams. Backstory on the project, this year we're working with the county. So the county has got a project that's going to work on County Road 23 from Parkview out of town past the communities, or the city park. With that, we're looking at redoing Edgewood Street from 23 all the way to Highway 10. We're working on the intersection to make some improvements there. That's being led by the county. But as we're looking at Edgewood as well, there's a new trail that's going to go north of Edgewood out just past City Park. As we looked at this, one of the things that's been a hurdle for quite some time is the intersection of Edgewood as you approach easterly towards County Road 23. The sight lines are not very favorable, and it's been a tough situation. So I approached the Williams family probably 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. I've had some really good conversations with Jimmy on what we could do over there to try and create a site triangle for that property. So as you're approaching the stop sign on 23, especially when you're looking south towards town, if we could open that area up. There's a lot of underbrush there. There's several trees in that area. He's got a storage shed there as well. So the proposal that's in front of you tonight that we worked out was to look to move that shed a little bit closer towards their property, clear out a lot of that underbrush, and then in exchange for access and maintenance, we would put up a vinyl fence that would be a 3-sided fence that would give them privacy, but would also open that up. So if you're a pedestrian or a biker on the trail or a vehicle on the street, you'd open up those sight lines. And I think it's a pretty favorable for the city. It solves a huge community need. With the county, we've addressed the Edgewood Trail, the 23 trail from Parkview to Edgewood. You're riding in the ditch. The trail on Edgewood is primarily in the ditch the whole way, but with that, the new scope of work will bring that trail up on grade sooner. So the pedestrians and bikers will be at grade level quicker, so they're not coming out of the ditch right at the intersection. Along with that, we'll work through the drainage components. If we need to put a collection point there and get it underneath Edgewood, as we transfer that water to the golf course, we'll do that as well. There is a decent ditch over there right now, but the commitment to the property owner is we'll transfer no water onto their property. We'll collect it all and deal with it appropriately, not leaving it in the ditch, getting it away if we need to. So all of that being said, I would like to get a props to Jimmy and Dana. They've been really good to work with. It was a little tough. There were some issues prior with some lilacs and some things that maybe wasn't done right, but we've worked through that, and they've been very responsive and very respectful, understanding that this is a big community need, and I think it's very favorable. So with that, I'd look for movement on resolution 2607. One thing on that, the hard dollars on this, Public Works staff is going to do most of the work. The hard dollars cost for the fence and everything associated with that is about $6,500. I am asking for $10,000 because there's one big oak tree. If we take that down, we may hire a contractor to pull that down because of all the power lines and the roadways and all of that stuff. I don't want to put my guys in harm's way to do that. So that would be the overall ask tonight. And the timing of this, the commitment we're making to the Williams family is we're not going to open that area up and leave it sit for 2 months. So we got to see what the timing of the county project is because they're doing that trail work. So this may be midsummer, it may be fall. The commitment is we'll make sure that Jimmy and Dana know exactly what we're doing and when we're doing it. Our goal would be to remove those, the underbrush and stuff like that on a Monday or Tuesday, so we can start setting fence panels right away, yet that week, so their privacy is limited to being exposed for a few days. So I think we can do that. Our staff can handle most of this stuff, and we'll make sure surveyors get out there, we get everything, positioned properly and make it go. So the big thing is we'll commit to them. There is a property just to the south of them that's got a white vinyl fence that's up, just a shorter fence. That's the type of fence we're looking. It's gonna be more of a sand tone that'll match their house and their decor a little bit better, but that's a similar fence that you'll see. So, and with that, I can stand for any questions.
All right, any questions for Phil?
When would we start? Do we know? Or we don't know yet?
I don't know that because I don't know what the county schedule is on that. Yep, so as soon as the county lets us know, I'll let you know right away.
Beautiful.
Okay?
Okay. All right, if not, we would look for a motion on Resolution 2607, a resolution allowing entry, transfer, and maintenance to the Williams property.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mike, second by Becky. Is there any further discussion? I'll just take this point. Jimmy's here. Thank you, Jimmy. Something the community is going to appreciate, and it's going to increase the level of safety there immensely. And we appreciate you and Dana, being willing to work with Phil and get this done. So, thank
As you
you.
guys know, I've been at my resort, during the summer months, and every time I'd come back, I'd trim my lilacs back. Mr. Knudsen alluded to it. You guys did some stuff to my lilacs, and it is what it is. A couple years ago. Just being honest, if Dana didn't call me in last July or whenever that child was hit by a car, I would have still been telling you to pound sand. We'll figure something out, but because that happened, I went, we gotta do something. And when Mr. Knudsen told me you're gonna raise the path in front of, next to my property, because you guys know this, we all know this, when you pull up to 23, all of a sudden the kid's up. You don't see him, and then he's right there. So we're more than happy to do this, and I told Mr. Knudsen, I was just gonna come here to give you shit. A call bringer lost the post office.
Well, that's a whole nother topic.
Clark, I'm giving you.
I know.
I've known you a long time.
Maybe we'll put the post office in the corner. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
For more of my land?
I'm kidding. We appreciate it. Please tell Dana too that we do appreciate this.
It's all good. Just you stay in touch with me. And I love the fact of what we're doing. I think it's gonna help the community, and it's really gonna help the sidelines.
Yep, for sure.
Thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Right, we had a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion carried. Thank you also, Phil. I know that you worked on that for a very long time and were very persistent, and we appreciate that. This is a true win-win where citizens are working with government to do the right thing, so.
Happy to do it, so. yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Letter B, MSAS Advanced Funding Request. Mr. Knudsen again, Resolution 2604.
All right, so we're working on Edgewood. It's a very complicated project, and it's a very large project for the city. It's our first, once we reached 5,000 people, we become state aid qualified, and this will be our first state aid project. A whole set of rules that come along with that, but there's also a funding source that comes along with that. So MSAS has a program that you can borrow into future years' funds. And tonight in front of you, that's what we're looking to do right now. So the maximum they'll allow is to go up to 5 years of your prior year. It's kind of weird because 2026 doesn't count yet. It's not in our bank, but we can't use it as a year and borrow 5 years out from that. So 26 is kind of one of those years. But what we're looking for tonight is to borrow into those funds. We've already sent the initial engineering estimates out there, the engineered documents of what the project's going to look like. It qualifies for everything. And now the funding that's out there, we're likely to get it, but it's kind of a first come, first serve. So that's why we're jumping on it as soon as we can tonight and get that funding. So there's a lot more that's gonna go to that, but tonight the resolution is just gonna say you guys are approving and you support the city of Becker reaching out to MSAS to secure advanced funding for the project. The funds The future funds or advanced funds, along with our existing funds, are still gonna fall short of the project, but we do have other funding mechanisms that we'll look at through our CIP or alternative funding sources. We'll discuss that in full detail once the plans and specs are here. If you guys approve the project and move it out to bid, we'll have more detail on that. And then once we actually get the bid, we'll have true documents or true engineer costs or bid costs as we go through that. So tonight, there's really no cost to it. We're just saying MSAS, our city supports asking for these advanced funds, and that's what the resolution will cover here tonight. So with that, I can stand for any other questions as well, though.
Anybody have any questions for Phil on the Edgewood? Obviously a needed project. We just are gonna fix the sight line and now we'll take care of the rest of the road and get the trail up where it belongs.
The trail is part of this as well, so there's going to be, on the design work, there's two sections of that. There'll be an urban section, so from Brenda east, it'll have curb and gutter on both sides, and west of Brenda, it'll still be that rural section, because we've got more room to acquire the drain, but the trail is going to be moved on grade the whole way. So, with the development that's being considered further west, we'll look at what that trail impact would look like and where the crosswalk would be at, that depending on where we're going with that. But if that is incorporated, we'll add that into the design project as well for Edgewood, so we don't have to come. We hate to do something and then in 3 or 4 years tear it up and have to add to it. So if there's turn lanes or anything like that, we've already addressed that, so.
Okay. Nope, so we are looking for a motion on Resolution 2604, a resolution requesting advancement of future municipal state aid construction funds.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Robin, second by Mike. Is there any further discussion? I'd just say to staff, thank you for coming up with this. It's a really good funding plan at a nice zero interest rate, which always helps. And we can get a project that the community is definitely asking for done, so. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I apologize, I should have let out with 0% interest on that loan, so
That's
sorry.
okay, you just threw it in there. That's always good. All right, Mr. Sanders has the Comprehensive Housing Study Consultant selection with Resolution 2606.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For you tonight, we're considering the selection of a consultant for the comprehensive housing study. So the last time this was done was in 2019, and the 2019 one was done by Maxfield. It was kind of piggybacking, or 2020, and it was piggybacking on the county's housing study that they did. So it was more of an executive summary. In the comprehensive plan, we do talk about one of the goals in there is to support increase and promote a variety of housing options to accommodate residents. And one of those action items is to keep the housing study updated approximately every 5 years. Data gets outdated pretty quickly, and especially some of this was during COVID, and so it's even more outdated because of that. So we received 12 proposals. One of them was received late, so in the RFP, that's one of those pretty defined lines, so that one wasn't considered. That's a lot of proposals to receive, and I just want to give a shout out to Austin and Karn for their help on going through those and combing through them to narrow down what we thought was a good field for interviews. So 3 firms were selected, both in Mink, Redevelopment Resources, and Confluence, and those took place at the EDA. Interviews took place at the EDA on the 12th of this month. So after discussion, the EDA ranked them. Redevelopment came in first, Bolton and Mink second, and Confluence third. The reasons redevelopment was considered and recommended for this is they have really strong graphic capabilities. Their submitted work examples were really applicable to what we were searching for. They have a lot of expertise in a lot of the TIF and other development incentives. They also have real life expertise as realtors, developers, and otherwise. And so for what we're looking for is an actionable document and what they've produced, EDA felt that they'd be a good fit. It was noted, EDA noted that a close second, because there was some back and forth on Bolton and Mink, and redevelopment would be Bolton and Mink. So if redevelopment couldn't complete the contract that would come back to you, then Bolton and Mink would be a strong second candidate for this. So you do have somebody that could fill in should redevelopment not be able to complete their work. But again, we believe they'd be a really good fit as well from the staff side, just based on what we're looking for. And so if council chooses to select redevelopment resources, that would come back with a contract at a later date that you would approve, that would lay out the scope of services and kind of the nuts and bolts behind what they would be doing. And so we're looking for a motion and a second adopting resolution 2606, which would select redevelopment resources to complete that study. And just as a side note too, 30,000 as a reminder is budgeted in the admin CIP for this project. And we did have some reach out to some of the consultants that were not selected. They appreciated that. A lot of time and effort goes into these for these consultants, and so it's the least we can do to talk to, especially the ones that interviewed, to talk to them on the phone and explain why they didn't get it. And so a lot of them are very appreciative of that as well. So with that, we're seeking for that motion and second, and I'll stand for any questions.
All right, is there any questions for Jacob? If not, we would entertain a motion for Resolution 2606, a resolution selecting Redevelopment Resources LLC to complete a comprehensive housing study, needs analysis, and development action plan.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Becky, second by Rick. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're on to the consent agenda. Mr. LaRue.
Mayor Cobinger and city council members, items for adoption, approval, or review on tonight's consent agenda include the revised hiring and termination report, payment of the bills, the minutes of the January 6th city council meeting, minutes of the January 6th executive session meeting, the minutes of the December 18th budget and finance committee meeting, resolution 26-05 accepting a $2,500 donation from the Becker Lions for an AED for the BCC. Pay app number 15 and final in the amount of $90,000 to Apex Construction Group for the Police Department City Hall project. And I will stand for any questions.
All right, any questions for Greg on the consent agenda? I think I say it every month, thank you to the Lions. AED at the BAC is a great step, so thank you, Lions.
Question that is not really that important, but our final pay request on the construction, did we end up above or below the?
I'll have that number for you at the next meeting. We're talking about, Councilmember Hendrickson brought up the radio system, the amplifiers are gonna be needed in the PD. We probably have funds left available for that, so we will get you a final report. on
Yeah,
where
I was
that
just
project
curious
ended
how
up.
it came in
Yep.
based on.
It did, I believe it came in under what we anticipated.
All right. Anyone care to move approval of the consent agenda?
Move approval as the consent agenda is presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Rick, second by Mike. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That consent agenda is carried. Quick shout out to Chief Lindblom and Josh Kua from city staff. They came and presented at Career Day last Friday at the middle school. I think you survived. Okay, appreciate that very much. Thank you for being involved. Does anybody else have any additional agenda items for tonight? If not, we'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Robin, second by Rick. All in favor of adjourning, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Meeting's adjourned at 5:24. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna move into, do you wanna just roll with executive? Okay, let's take a couple minute break.
Oh,
I'm gonna need more lifesavers.
Need some?
No, I've got a whole bunch right there.
Okay.
Well, you got the good ones.
You like the orange ones? Nobody else does.
Oh my
Ew.
gosh, I love those.
I always throw them to Robin. I'm like, here.
Here, I'll trade you one for one.
A little barter system going on?
Yeah.
Chris, that email I sent.
Test.
No, it's fine, but it was funny because I'm like, oh, he'll love this because he was just here, but I'll shoot it out.
Yeah, Becker High School made Libs a TikTok today.
We should add this. If I could get someone to work the roles, let's do that.
Yeah. We,
As soon as I put something like that out there, they're gonna go,
Wow, I guess over there.
isn't that sad?
100%. Any of our like activities and stuff that we do nowadays, that's just
Which I would think that'd be the fun part of your job.
definitely, that's my style, but apparently other people.
Just kidding. Oh my God, that was so funny
I
last
walk
night
in and
though.
just give money out.
You're like, here.
Maybe I do, maybe I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I laughed last night.
I'll take it.
Are you on the board now? Is that new?
Because why not be on another one?
I don't know.
Sarah's like, come on, Becky. I'm like,
She asked me to, and I'm like, nah, I got a couple things for $1.
I know. Well, my littles though.
Someday.
Yeah. I'm like, I guess. But last night was hilarious.
I appreciate that.
All right,
Boys,
but
though?
This was neat to the good ones.
Like, last night was hilarious. With all the boys. You forget how boys are
Hit me
chaos.
when you need more.
They,
I'm like,
well, I appreciate them being here.
next time I buy them, I'll buy more of those. I thought I was able to
I never
do
see
one.
them. I mean, I don't like
Preparation.
You know, the only time
hardcore
I
look for 'em,
ever
but-
saw
Right.
was at the
I was
dollar
like,
store.
Really?
My OC.
good to know.
Oh, me too. So like, my table was out of control. I go, this is not a race.
I could even
I'm like,
walk
we're
up
gonna
there.
calm down. So like 4 or 5. I'm like,
We had like.
Although, that'll get tested this week.
and I'm like,
I'm like, what is he?
Yeah, I'm not walking
oh,
anymore.
they're stapling. I was killing my OCD. I'm like, no, we're gonna fold.
About the same.
Figure out how to get
Fold.
my
They're
daughter
just going.
to
I'm like, that's what I should tell Sarah. I'm like, maybe I'm not. Yeah, maybe I'm not good for this. I'm like, no. Uh huh.
Yeah, apparently.
Yep, that's on you.
What do you think, Jacob? Are you set? Want to go?
Yep.
All right, we will call the executive meeting, January 20th, 2026, executive session to order at 5:27. And we're starting out with the Luann Drive Development TIF discussion. Mr. Sanders is up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. So tonight we have with us Land and Resources Consulting LLC and True Blue and Mike Cappers. Did I say that right? Yes, okay. I've said it the other way too and I was wrong. So they're here tonight to discuss the Luann development. You've seen, I think most of you have seen a concept previously of this. I'll let them discuss, but the one that you're seeing tonight is one that staff has worked on, a number of changes that we heard from Planning Commission and some of the other individuals on the development. And so I'll let them present on it. They'll present kind of at a fairly high level. They're just looking to make sure that this development concept is kind of aligns with what you are expecting to see, especially based on the grant application that we submitted previously and received funds for. And then just general kind of direction on submitting for and considering a full TIF application. So I'll let them introduce themselves and we'll go from there.
All right, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Todd Ohl, and I'm with Land and Resource Consulting. We did the drawings basically for the development team. And we appreciate your time in taking a look at this. It's gonna be somewhat new in the way that we're approaching a private, public team, approach on this one. I just wanted to walk through the concept a little bit because it really incorporated that team, effort up front. I think you all saw the concept we did. It had one cul-de-sac that came off of Luann at one point, and all of the units, with the exception of the apartments, were located on that road. But it did exceed the maximum length of a cul-de-sac, which of course there's fire concerns, there's plow concerns, there's all kinds of different things that go along with that. That and several other comments came from your staff, and then we met with them, coordinated with them. We came up with a new concept that addressed some of them, most of them, and there's still things being discussed. And so this is conceptual. I have to remind everybody, this is conceptual level right now, so we're kind of sitting at 10,000 feet looking down. It's a good fit plan. We know the boundary very accurately, but as far as grades, utilities, those things, all those details need to be worked out. The reason we're in front of you tonight is that this is because this, it's really something the city has recognized before. There's a grant that was applied for to extend Luann, and the reason being is that that benefits the public, generally speaking, completes the road network, getting it up to Edgewood. The utilities would be extended as part of that. And it's a challenge for this site if it weren't being done that way. There are other challenges associated with the site to what we call cover a gap, so to speak. And because this one is located where it is and it's against some higher intense uses, US 10 sitting there, whatnot, we went through cost estimates, preliminary, and identified this is a sound project, but it does require some gap financing to help out in the long run. So with that, we revised the layout. So we went with more of a, what we call the barbell now, where it comes off of Luann in one spot and then goes in two directions. So we don't exceed that length, that dead end length anymore. We reduced the number of the 8-unit and 4-unit and quad unit buildings, and then increased the number of apartments. So there was about a 10-unit swing there that swung from the smaller scale units into the apartments. And so what we're trying to get to here is a multi-use residential development that really caters to a lot of different options for your community. And by that, it could be the twin homes would lend themselves well for seniors because they're a slab on grade, they're relatively small floor plans, they're easy to maintain. And then a lot of times these are starter homes or they're seniors that are just empty nesters that want to downsize. But in order to get here, we have to cover that gap. So what we're doing is looking at the possibility of doing a TIF. And it came to our attention that you're not real familiar with the city doing a lot in the way of TIF. TIF basically is a method to establish what the baseline tax, and if I'm starting too early, trying to establish the baseline tax that's collected today. We have an investment that's going to raise the tax, and this is really elementary terms, but we capture a portion of that, and over the course of sometimes 26 years, sometimes 21 years, 16, whatever is appropriate, that captured tax goes back to the developer. And so everything up front is out of pocket to get it constructed, to get it up and running, get it built, get it occupied. And with everything south of the apartments, that's all owner occupied. So these are, first-time home buyers that where they can come in and establish equity in a home and investment in the community. And then also the apartments, what they do is they end up being a feeder to those home ownership situations. So we have sometimes single people or single plus one or parents with one that are living in an apartment that actually end up save up some money, and then they can step into different alternatives with ownership. And then people can move throughout the community, not only this one but the adjacent communities, without having to go too far out of the neighborhood, because people really like to stay in neighborhoods. This has enough options here, as well as the options that are already there, to allow people to stay in those neighborhoods and keep pretty much their same neighbors and whatnot, without having to move too far out. We have coordinated with, again, on a conceptual basis, we've coordinated with engineering such that, we're looking at how do we serve this, where are the utilities at, what gets extended as part of the Luann extension. And that grant, the status of that grant is that it was awarded, but I believe the actual expenditure would come up in 2027. If this were to go forward and we could make an arrangement with TIF to move this forward or help move it forward, we would want to move a little quicker than that. So another consideration we'd have for you would be, number one, let's talk more about TIF and see if there's a comfort level there going forward. And if so, we'd like to coordinate with the city on how we would do the Luann improvements as part of the project. And then the grant money reimburse the developer possibly a year from now, or a year from now in 2027, and that grant money is available. So there are different formats of TIF as far as what the capture amount is, and those haven't all been decided. But and there's also some of the comments we've heard from the city thus far about if we're going to do an apartment component to this, which we know there's going to be an apartment component, some portion of that has to be affordable. Right now, what we're dealing with conversations that we have with relationships with apartment builders is we're going to start off at the 20% at 50% of the units. So at the end of the day, if we had 130 units there, which is 136 that are included in the plan right now, about 27 to 30 of them would be affordable and set at that AMI at 50% AMI for the area. Now that may change. That's the lowest amount starting up, but we may talk to a developer that is comfortable going higher than that. And that's why I say we're going to start where we're starting and then move up from there. So because, you know, different apartment builders and owners and operators have different formats and models of how they like to run and what they like to run. So, yeah, so if there's any questions on the layout or TIF, we went through a lot of different questions and responded to those, revised the plan several times and coordinated with your staff along the way. If there's any questions, we'd like to field those.
I have, you wanted to start moving sooner. You kind of lost me there. Because we're doing the street and water and sewer, and evidently we're not doing it as soon as what you would like to see it done. Is that correct?
Well, that's part of it. And thank you for the question. There's two items. When you're doing any project that has impervious surface in it, you're gonna have to coordinate where the utilities are, the depth of utilities, the frequency of utilities, where they lead for all of the proposed uses, as well as all the stormwater runoff. So so that's one item, is that we're looking toward being able to just control or design it to fit this development and make sure that all of the city goals are met throughout that process. And the way we're proposing that is that we work with your engineer.
Okay, because it sounded like you wanted to actually do the project, and I was gonna question that.
Right, and then there's question too, as when it's public money, we have to work through those details as well, as to, there are requirements for bidding, for example. And if that becomes an issue, what we do is we just turn the drawings and specs over to your engineer to be bid publicly and advertised according to how it's supposed to be. What that does is it keeps it on the same schedule with us and the coordination with us, so that we know all the leads are at the right depth for every use here. We know the stormwater is all gonna be combined for not only the development, but all the road surface. And everything gets done at the same time. It also includes what you're talking about, constructing it. So knowing if we wanted to move forward and do a spring start, for example, which it may be late spring, it may be midsummer, however that works out, as we can most quickly get going, the grant money may not be available at that point. And so if it's not, then we would work those details out in the DA to where we would actually pay for that up front. And then possibly a year later, we'd be looking for the grant money to reimburse us for the construction of Luann and the utilities in accordance with, you know, city standards.
As long as we could do it that way, I guess.
Yeah, and all those details are really, we've been, again, talking with all your staff and whatnot. And there are some of those questions we don't have answers to yet, as to what we can and can't do, and what those limitations are. So I believe that was, your staff has contacted the state now and looked for some direction on some of those items.
Okay.
Jacob, do you have an update?
I was just gonna say, we have contacted the state. Austin's been in contact with them. Getting an answer has not been a quick process on the grant. We don't have the contract either, and I know they were, I think, what was it, a couple weeks ago, they said they would have some grant details forthcoming, but we haven't seen those yet. And so we've asked a couple of the questions that Todd touched on, and so we're just waiting on the response. And I think I would generally say there's a lot of details to flush out between the grant and some of the TIF. Really what tonight is about is getting the concept kind of pretty comfortable with where that's at, and then on the TIF front, saying we're comfortable considering it with a full, complete application, because we don't have that yet. There is an application process they have to go through. There's the escrow, there's the amounts, there's a whole run that has to be done by the finance consultant. So there's a lot of details that still have to go into this, but this is at a high level. And so I think for a project of this caliber, which we've been looking for from the grant side, it is a good fit for what we are looking for. We don't have a lot of developers that are busting down our door to build. And we do generally hear without some of these gap financing tools, it used to be where you'd hear some of that from some developers to make more money. Now it's just every single one of them are asking about it, especially on housing projects, because of the cost of infrastructure and development in general has just gone up substantially over the years. So that's all I really wanted to say, is just to kind of recap at a general level. That's what we're looking for tonight. And I think Todd touched on a number of those things, that they've been pretty responsive to trying to do what the city's looking for. And they've worked with Randy too on the engineering, so.
Would you be looking to put the whole project into TIF, or just the houses, or just the apartments, or both?
Well, to maintain the maximum amount of flexibility for the developer side, we'd put two TIF districts together, actually. One would be the apartments and the description around that, and then another one for the rest of the units. That way, True Blue, for example, they would love to build this, but long-term ownership operation likely isn't gonna be the way it goes. It may be the way it goes, but it gives them that option to, at some point, if they need to transfer that TIF to an apartment builder, operator. Because, you know, with all of these districts comes auditing every year. You have to be really vigilant about who your applicants are, who you're selling to, and make sure that you're staying within those guidelines. Otherwise, you're out of the compliance with your TIF.
Would you, so you have, in the concept here, you have three buildings listed. Would you be thinking to build all three right away, or would that be something you would potentially stagger?
You know, with the group that we're talking to with right now, this is their type of community as far as size and whatnot. They'd build one at a time. And then, similar to what you saw over by the golf course, they'd build one, they'd try to fill it or get it to a certain occupancy rate, and then they'd immediately start on the next one. And we feel, you know, obviously we're very confident that there's still a big need out there for for this housing, otherwise we wouldn't be here, so.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have, whether it's the housing study or just, you know, the feel, you know, you're not gonna have, I don't think you'll have issues. I think it'll be built, you know, that one over there, we saw, you know, they filled up in 3 months, I think it was, yeah. So they're at 100% occupancy in less than 90 days, so.
Yeah, and there's a magic, I don't know how to explain it, but every housing study I've ever seen, and I've been doing this my entire adult life, there's always a magic piece that can't be measured. And that's, where do all these people come from? Because, I'll give you another example that's a really good side-by-side with the one you guys just built, is Zimmerman. I think there was 148 units in that first phase, and there were people lined up to get into them. There aren't that many people in Zimmerman right now that would fit that category to want an apartment, but they come. And, you know, obviously with Becker Schools, there's a highly desirable area to be in, so I don't think we're gonna have any problem filling them up.
And I'm assuming the homes would go, you're not gonna build them all on spec, I'm assuming those would probably go few at a time, sell a few at a time, so that's maybe why you would do a separate district as well.
Yeah, no, thank you, Council, that's another good question, is what you'll see with these types of units is the twins, you'll sell a side, and then you'll build two. You build a building at a time. Same is true with a 4-unit, same is true with an 8-unit. They'll have, with an 8-unit, for example, I think they'll wanna sell 2 before they build the whole building. And then once that building's up, you have 6 more units to sell, and you get, you know, 2 or 3 more sales, and you start on your next one. So there'll be some specs. There'll also be some people that approach them and say, yeah, I want to be part of that twin, but you're going to build me it'll be a somewhat unique plan. So you'll find both, but most of them will be spec.
Todd, could you comment again on your timeline?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to get started putting a shovel in the ground as soon as close to the spring as possible. Now, with reality and entitlement processes and approvals, it's really looking toward early summer than anything else. That would be the best case scenario. I'd say a midsummer start.
Jacob, I have a follow-up for you then. So we're talking about, have we ever done TIF before? It's
Been
many years ago.
many years, right?
We haven't done one since I've been here. I don't know if anybody here has actually done one,
I have.
except for Mike, excuse me, he just said that.
Mike invented the wheel, but you know,
Is that when we still had a post office too, Mike?
I think you mentioned earlier it was the Tom Thumb building.
Yeah,
That
it
was,
Tom
yeah,
Thumb
so
building.
it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yep.
So my question is, we just approved a housing study that's gonna talk about, should we do TIF? How should this work? How do all our incentives work?
Yep.
And we're talking about, with this timeline, approving something before we have the results of that in.
Yeah, I think it would weigh into it. I think you're gonna find, to Rick's point, the demand is there. Now, what that actual final number is, I couldn't tell you because we haven't seen it. But the concept like this would probably weigh into the housing study and weigh on what the demand would be in the community. And so you are doing your housing study, but it kind of coincides with the project as well. So I don't necessarily think the timing is as big of an issue as far as when they build out on the housing study. I think the consultant would consider what that concept does to the results of the housing study. Does that answer your question?
I don't think so, cause I thought part of the housing study was to look at incentives.
It is.
Cause I'm looking at, we got the sack and whack discounts going on, we've talked about delaying those. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around, we have all these ideas that
Yep.
are gonna come out of this housing study, but we're saying before that's done, we have this separate track we're running on. You know, I'm not saying I can't get there, but I'm saying, isn't that what the housing study is supposed to tell us?
Yeah, I think it's structured in a way to tell you how competitive you are with other communities on your incentives. That's what we're asking, right? You're asking the question, are we gonna approve a project before we actually know the answer to that? Potentially, based on what we're hearing though, I would not be shocked that we're gonna hear that other communities have some competitive advantage on this front. That being said, you are if you consider TIF, it would be approval before your housing study gets in place. But based on what we're hearing, I would say that it's a pretty good likelihood that we're gonna see that those incentives do weigh heavily into development going into certain communities if they are offering them. But if the question is, do you need to wait until we have the results of it? You certainly could. It's just I don't know how that impacts the developer timeline from their construction
Well, at this
standpoint.
point in time, we're operating off of our old housing study.
Correct.
So, I mean, it isn't as though we don't have a housing study.
Well, I've seen it, I don't know how good it is, to be honest.
It was one that the county.
All due respect.
It was
No,
one
I
that the
didn't
county-
do it, so.
No, I know. I know you didn't. I know you didn't. I wouldn't have said it if you did.
I know.
I would've texted
You
you.
texted me and said, crappy job.
Nice job on that one. No, I'm not, no one, yeah, I realize that piece. It's
I see what you're saying.
a hurdle for me
Yeah.
because it's, you know, we're gonna talk about a water treatment plant later, and here's the recommendations, but we're gonna build one before.
Yeah.
It's just.
Oh, I get that. And I think it was a general, I don't know if it'll get into, it's gonna tell us competitive advantages. I don't know how nitty gritty into the details though. It's gonna necessarily, X community is doing these TIFs and it resulted in this many numbers. I think we're looking for more of an overall understanding. So I get what you're saying. Martin, Greg, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that the housing study, the incentive tools are already known. Everybody knows what they are. The housing study isn't going to, get down into a particular development because you can't do that with the study. It's a very general, how many units and of what kind are available. So this won't have any, the idea of offering incentives or even approving incentives doesn't have any impact on the housing study. It will have impact on the housing study will be how many more apartments, units are we gonna be able to support? It'll be factored into those numbers, not into the incentives. That'll always be a council decision.
Yeah, I get that, but I think the housing study would tell us what other communities are doing.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, go ahead, John, sorry.
There's a couple of items that struck me while you were talking, and number one, there's a couple of really well-known consultants in the area that do this type of, all the background work, make sure you're operating within the statutes and whatnot, because these are all set. The statutes are all written, they've been tried and true. One is, Ellers and another is Northland, and you guys, are with Northland. There's an extraordinary amount of experience that comes with Northland of what are other people doing, how are they doing it. Not only that, but they will take all of our project details and plug it into what the statute says and what the norm is and what they're comparing to with other communities and what others have done. So there's a lot of experience coming with that relationship that you've hired. The other item is, my best experience, is hindsight. There's always a first. And the experience there will help you define what you want to see, what you don't want to see in the future of how things are done. We're going to do the best we can. Northland's going to do the best they can. Your staff is obviously doing the best they can. And we'll get there from here. There will be some caveats in the future that you'll say, well, just like everything else, I wish we would have. I wish we would have done that instead of this or whatever. So, I think from a city standpoint, you're covered with the relationship you have that you bring in. Northland is no slouch when it comes to this type of work. We've worked with them in other communities, as close as Princeton, as a matter of fact, a couple of them just recently. So they'll come with counsel, they'll come with recommendations on how you should, how you shouldn't. So, and the other item I wanted to say was something that has this amount of investment. In many, many cases, there is a requirement by the banks, financiers, to require that we do our own housing study to prove to them that there is the need here and that we're filling a need. So, and what that absorption rate would be.
My understanding too, Mr. Mayor, if I could, on the, I'm thinking, I was more worried about the housing study, not in the context of this project, but, at what point, let's say we go forward with this project and the housing comes back and says, 175 units. Well, is that counting this, or how is that gonna take this into effect? I guess that would be more of my concern, how to, you'd almost, I don't know if you pause that or, delay that a little bit, because, then you're always gonna have that question of, well, was that before or after? I've never looked at a housing study as I've been part of a couple of them. I guess I've never looked at them as a way to say, not even necessarily here's what this community is doing or that community is doing. I've always liked to retain that position for myself. But more so just what can the market reasonably support? So if there's a need for, multifamily housing or something that I maybe don't see, something that could tell us that, there's a huge demand for that, or there's not a demand for, apartments or, something. I guess that's what I've probably gleaned the most out of a housing study before, not, how we should finance it, or how the project should finance, or how we should participate, if at all.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I was looking for that either. It's curious timing.
Can I say one thing on that too? The other thought I had, and I don't want to guarantee anything with redevelopment resources, but you haven't done a contract. They have submitted a proposal that has tasks and detailed timelines. But one of the thoughts is, because it's a section in and of itself on the incentives piece, is we could have a conversation with them that puts that up further or earlier in the process, because it isn't necessarily always tied to the data of the population, et cetera, et cetera. You're more looking at developments and what tools were used to build them. And so that is something we could talk to them about. I don't know what they would say, but if we were interested in putting that at the first, maybe you have a preliminary understanding of where you're going early on in the project. That would be an option. Again, it's not, kind of like Greg mentioned, the TIF analysis isn't getting into super nuts and bolts of each TIF that we're looking at. It's more of just a general idea of what the market is doing and what it's supporting and what that's resulting in each community. And so, but that is an option that we could talk to them about, potentially, that may give you an answer to that question a little bit earlier in the process. I don't know if anybody has any.
To answer your specific question, they do take snapshots of where developments are in the process and when they're coming online, and they do take that into account on all their housing studies. The other item I wanted to just throw out there, and I know everybody's seen every article about it, but the strongest part of the biggest need of every community we enter, every community, bar none, is affordable housing. And that's really the target we're at here. We're not looking at, subsidized rent or anything like that, but it is a form of subsidy that helps us control the price of the house at the end of the day. And we do it through, what usually happens is we pass a savings along to the builder in the form of lot prices. And I'll give you an example. We just finished up construction and one in LeSueur. LeSueur is a little bit smaller than Becker, I believe, by number, but not much. I think by 200 people. The project was 35 lots, all single-family detached. The benefit was based on that and home ownership. And the lots were sold for $50,000 each with utilities for single-family detached, which is remarkably low. So that's how we pass savings along to the developer or the builder to make these affordable on the buyer side. We should take a show on the road.
Back and forth, yeah. Other questions?
Other questions, anybody?
So I see you got the landscape buffer along the, would be the southwest side of the project there. So I know in a previous discussion prior to you folks, I know we had heard from some of the business owners that would definitely appreciate something there, because I know there was some concern about some of them have, they didn't want folks using their lot as a cut through, but up to Highway 10 or something, but.
Right.
That was, so I'm glad you incorporated something there, because that was
Yeah.
a concern of business owners there.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna throw this out there too, because I'm from this area, so there is a special, I'm in the township, but same. When I look at projects like this, I look at not only this specific site, we look outside the border. And I always look for where's the closest park, where's the closest connection for pedestrians. I'm excited to know that Edgewood's being reconstructed. That's incredible to me. I'm also excited that within a half a block, there's a park. So anybody that's, pushing a stroller or riding a bike or wants to just go get some open space, there's a lot of open space down there. As a matter of fact, we wanted to start, I get to that point where I'm excited to say, okay, you got a lot of open space in that park. Can we fund a couple of pickleball courts there? Things like that. So there's close proximity. It's really well connected to the downtown area with getting to the golf course, getting to the city center with the pool and everything else. So I love the location. So I'm biased.
All right. Jacob, what else do you need from us?
I think just general agreement that the concept kind of fits with what you were looking on this, and then the other one is just more of a head nod that you'll give the go-ahead for them to submit a full TIF application to do that run. Obviously, that's all gonna come back to you, and there's a bunch of nuts and bolts in that, but that you'll at least consider it. Doesn't mean you're approving anything, just considering the TIF application. So if there's agreement on that, then that gives us what we need to move forward from now.
Yeah, I'd like to see him continue on.
Yeah,
We have general agreement, okay?
sounds like it.
All right, we will have them do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Yep, thank you. All right, so we're gonna have all these buildings, and apparently Chris wants us to have water. Man, jeepers. Quality water.
all kinds of water around back
That's
here.
right.
Careful. We got good water.
There, all right.
So today we have Chris Larson from SEH here, so he worked on the water feasibility study that you guys approved, kind of to look at kind of where we're at in our water system, what our needs are. We did address some of that in our water comp plan, so this is kind of highlighting some of the needs that we talked about there, and then kind of give you an idea of how we can meet those needs. So there'll be some information that goes with that, some costs that go with that, and at the end, you guys can ask some questions of him or us, and then we'll kind of see what you guys' feel is for how you want us to go forward with trying to address future water needs for the city. So with that, I'll read out to Chris.
Cool. All right. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, city staff. I'm going to take a second to log back into my computer. Okay, so Chris mentioned, I'm Chris Larson. I'm a water engineer and sort of specializing in water treatment with SEH. And we did a water system evaluation for you guys. The first thing I'll talk about are your existing wells. So the city of Becker has 7 existing wells right now. No, 6. I must say there's a 5 missing. So you have 6 existing wells. And 2 of them, so wells 2 through 6 are the older ones. They're all in town. And there's a map on the next page. But wells 7 and 8 were drilled recently, but it had some water quality issues where it's not water that you can't send into the system, but it's water that you'd likely get some complaints if you sent it into the system. The firm capacity of your wells right now, if you're not using wells 7 and 8, is 1,050 gallons per minute or 1.5 million gallons per day. And firm capacity is sort of a conservative way to look at how much capacity you have. So they say if you take your largest well out of service, then it's the remaining capacity of that. And that's, you look at that versus your maximum day demands and say, so conservatively, if your biggest well was out of production on your worst day, that determines whether or not you have sufficient capacity. So this is a map of the Becker water system and your well locations. Cursor's not showing right. So you get 3 wells, wells 2, 4, and 6, sort of on the south, and they're all relatively close together. Well 3 is north of that a little bit, and then you see wells 7 and 8 off to the east a fair distance. So we'll go through some of your water quality. One of the things, it's not so much specifically related to the wells that you have, but some of the wells you've been drilling, but nitrate is something that is, exists in some of Becker's water. Nitrate is, it's very likely that nitrate is caused by agricultural, fertilizer production, that sort of thing, and you have relatively shallow wells. So when it rains and stuff, the nitrate percolates down into the groundwater. You get some in your water. But nitrate is a primary standard, which means that you can't send water into the distribution system that has nitrate over 10 parts per million or 10 milligrams per liter. And it's an acute primary standard, so you can't. Some of the things have a rolling average, and if you exceed it, you get a notice of violation, but you don't even have to shut the well off. With nitrate, you would have to issue things on the news and that kind of stuff telling people not to drink the water. It would be, and you immediately have to shut that well off. So your existing wells are not really all that, so you have a little bit of nitrate in some of the wells, or some of them that we don't have data for, but your distribution system by and large has about 3 parts per million of nitrate in the tests that were collected versus a standard of 10. Another thing that we looked at is PFAS, which is the forever chemical that I'm certain everybody has heard of. You do have a little bit of PFAS in the 4 wells that are in town. I will say that we don't think that there's PFAS data for wells 7 and 8 right now, but I would say again that PFAS is a man-made compound. When you see the location of well 7 and 8, it's not in town. It's not where you would have sort of activities that might have likely caused PFAS contamination. I'm not suggesting it's not prudent to collect samples from well 7 and 8 to see if there's PFAS, but I would be a little bit surprised if there was. You do see that well 6, so all of your wells have a little bit of PFAS, and the PFAS compounds on the left side, there are different, these are all the regulated compounds. There's thousands of PFAS compounds apparently, but there's only 6 different things that are measured. You do have in well 6 that the PFOS, you do have that at 4.9 parts per trillion in this case, versus a standard of 4. But I will say that That was one of the ones where they operate that on a 4-quarter rolling average. So just because you have 4.9 in one sample doesn't mean that that well even exceeds the standard. But I do think it's enough where you can't ignore it. I mean, it's over the standard. You sort of have to operate under the assumption that it could at some point exceed the standard.
How would a PFAS get into a well like that? I mean, you think of that, if it's like you think of the chemicals that come off pots and pans and all the, all the different man-made stuff, but I mean, when it gets down there, if it's not from fertilizer, where would that come from?
Some sort of industrial, when I say industrial activity, I think like firefighting foam is a common source of PFAS. Obviously, you're in the Twin Cities, some of them, they're actually like putting PFAS in the dumps and that kind of stuff, but the first prediction might be firefighting foam, some sort of firefighting activity. And again, your water's shallow, so you know, if it was sprayed on the ground, it's likely to get.
Would it take a massive amount of it? I mean.
It doesn't take very much though. I mean, so this is a parts per trillion standard. So 1 part per trillion is 1 part per million of 1 part per million. So it's a million of a part per million. So it's an extremely low number. So a little bit would contaminate a lot of water. And again, I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever looked to try to figure out where it's coming from, but
our Becker sand is good for road beds, but it's not always as great because it allows movement of things very easily through the lower layers. So if it's in that, it'll move quickly. So you could have that source may not be that close to that well itself.
That's what I was just gonna bring up. It could be quite a ways away.
And we don't have good confining layers on our aquifers either. So we don't have a clay layer or a layer that would keep things from the surface from penetrating. So yes, we're more highly vulnerable to those kind of things in because of our geology.
And I wouldn't say that it's firefighting foam for sure either. But other industrial things that use PFAS, so it could have been some sort of manufacturing or something else. But somewhere along the line, it got into the groundwater. So the next thing we look at is iron and manganese. Your wells 2, 3, 4, and 6. We don't have data for a couple of them, but I think we have reason to think that there's, for all intents and purposes, little or no iron or manganese in the 4 wells that are located in town. The 2 that you do have data for are, like I said, essentially 0. And then wells 7 and 8 have, so, you know, the standard, the EPA standard for iron, or the standard at which you're likely to get complaints is 0.3. So you are above in both 7 and 8 at 0.7 and 1.58. Similar with manganese, you have the standard for that is 0.05 and you have 0.138 and 0.307. One thing I will say though is that I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, you got a little unlucky with wells 7 and 8, but I actually think you got lucky with wells 2, 3, 4, and 6 because iron and manganese are extremely common substances in well water in Minnesota. If you ask me what like sort of just a typical well in Minnesota, I would say it has a 1 part per million of iron and 0.2 of a part of manganese, and that, you know, you're sort of in that ballpark. But it is a point at which, like I said, if you don't do anything with it, you can add polyphosphate to sequester it, and that helps a little. But again, at these levels, you could get some complaints. And then not listed on here, there's CO2 in that water too. That actually would be the one thing that you would likely get complaints from. Sooner rather than later.
I did look up because I wanted to say look it up before the PFAS in 7 and 8. We've had 1 test so far. It doesn't have. It's not over in any of the categories for PFAS, so most of them came back as 0. So 7 and 8 that way are quite good.
Thank you. And I hadn't seen that. So.
I didn't want to say it in return.
So your future water demands, I mentioned that your firm capacity right now is 1.5 million gallons per day. Your projected water demand in 2028 is like 1.94 million gallons per day. And that's increasing to 2.73 million gallons per day in 2050. So you are right now on the borderline, or basically a little, like you have a little less firm capacity than you would like today. But it doesn't mean I mentioned that this firm capacity number is sort of a conservative way to look at things, that you'd have to have your biggest well out of service on your worst day. And well 7 and 8 are not, they don't, the standards that well 7 and 8 exceed are not health standards, they're aesthetic water, just appearance standards. So you could, it wouldn't be ideal, but you could use 7 and 8 if you ran into a problem.
And right now you get the problem you would see when you use it, because we did use them for a short time, hoping that you could just intermix it and it would be enough to kind of dilute it, is we very quickly got calls, especially since they're on the east side of the river, kind of Fossum, that area, calls about, I've got slightly orange water, my water's red, or I've got, my water bubbles, why is it bubbling? So some of those things that we had, so again, yeah, they are aesthetic, and unfortunately they're aesthetic things that people notice right away. So, yeah.
So one of the things that we've looked at, and I think that City of Becker has looked at extensively over the years, is, where can we find more water? Where can we find more water that we don't need to treat, that sort of thing. The two of the more recent exploratory wells were, this is basically straight north, and I could, people are familiar with where this is at.
That's over in the 212, isn't it?
Yes. It's this piece of property right here. But so we had some promising wells on that piece of property, and we're sort of aware that nitrate was present, but we actually had test wells drilled and then did some test pumping on it, and the northern one was at like 9 parts per million, and the standard is 10. And the southern one was a little better than that, but then given that I think you had some surprises with the water quality at 7 and 8, we ran like a week-long pump test on the southerly of these two wells. It came back at 5. And I think given that you got one at 9 and one at 5, it gives you some pause and concern about, is the one that's at 5 going to end up being at 9 in a few years? And it certainly could be. So the two wells that we're sort of promising have fairly high nitrate, which is something you can treat. We'll talk about a little bit here, but it wasn't a no-brainer that you would just use these two wells. So addressing future capacity needs, I mentioned that the two test wells that we looked at, the most recent two test wells, have nitrate. Wells 7 and 8 have iron, manganese, and carbon dioxide. And I've already said this, but it isn't for lack of trying with the new wells that you've drilled wells all over the place, looking for water that you wouldn't have to treat. A new water treatment plant at wells 7 and 8 would alleviate the capacity concerns. It would, you'd go from, it would increase your firm capacity enough where you'd be over the limit. You'd also have the opportunity of additional wells at that site. One of the advantages of that is it takes advantage of some of your existing infrastructure. Obviously, the well houses for 7 and 8, the wells and the well house exist already. Whereas if you're back at what would have been wells 9 and 10, you'd still need to drill formal wells and build some sort of pump houses. So we also evaluated nitrate removal water treatment plant for the test wells. One thing that you sort of get into with the test wells that had nitrate in them, if you were to build a water treatment plant for that, is that if you needed additional capacity, so I think the capacity of those two wells are relatively low, so you're going to need additional capacity at some point, and A nitrate removal water treatment plant doesn't do anything for anything besides nitrate. So if you find iron and manganese in the next well, so what you sort of have to do with to guarantee that you wouldn't have to build some other form of treatment is find wells that only contain nitrate and not other constituents. And that sort of combined with the fact that, like I said, you already have existing infrastructure at well 7 and 8, we feel like building a water treatment, if you're gonna build a water treatment plant, it's safer and better to try to build it at well 7 and 8. So a water treatment plant, what that would consist of, so we would propose or suggest a 2 million gallon per day water treatment plant. And we would size that at sort of a conservative filtering rate so that if you needed to add, so that 10 state standards allows you to filter water through sand between 2 gallons per minute per square foot and 4 gallons per minute per square foot. So if we sized it using the more conservative 2 gallons per minute per square foot, it would allow you to, if we're calling it 2 MGD at 2 million gallons for 2 GPM per square foot, at 3 GPM per square foot, which is still a fairly comfortable filtering rate, it would be a 3 million gallon plant. So you could add additional wells to this water plant as you needed to in the future. There's a couple of different types of water treatment plants. Most of the ones that we were looking at are using sand, they're sand filters, but you can put them in whatever the container for the sand is. In this case, we're looking at like concrete gravity filters where it's a concrete box that has a sand filter inside of it. We also looked at steel. We can have a steel box that has the sand filter inside of it. Again, for multiple reasons, the size of this facility is sort of lends itself to concrete gravity. The steel is just more, you have to rehab it and paint it every 20 years or so, that sort of thing. And there's advantages to the concrete gravity. I would also say too, the concrete gravity filter plant, the lifespan of that is 75 years or more, so it would last a long, long time. The treatment train that we would propose is aeration, which is where you run water through, you're pumping air up and cascading water down through it. It adds oxygen to the water, but it would also strip carbon dioxide. It also oxidizes iron. Detention, which is just a slow spot where it allows chemicals to react. Filtration is a sand, likely would be some sort of fluid, like there's a coal-based media and then sand underneath that. Followed by a 500,000 gallon clear well, which is just stored filtered water. The other thing I didn't get into this, our report also looked at a storage analysis, and it largely said if you add a 500,000 gallon clear well at a water plant, you don't need additional storage, until almost 2050, and even the additional storage you need in 2050 is modifying one of your existing towers. So largely your storage situation is pretty good. Then there's chemical addition at these water plants and then pumping from the clear well into your distribution system. One thing with a sand filter plant like this is it sort of provides the foundation. If you ever said, well, what about PFAS or what about these other things? A lot of times sand filtration is the pre-treatment for more advanced filtration anyway. So if you had, say you needed to use reverse osmosis membranes for something, but you can't go direct to reverse osmosis membranes anyway, you need to have pre-treatment, and sand filters are oftentimes the pre-treatment for more advanced treatment. So that it provides you a level of safety if something else comes up. This is a layout of the first floor plan of a water treatment plant. The filters, these are the filters here. This is a detention tank. These are mostly chemical rooms, an electrical room, a mechanical room, like an office control room. This is the clear well, which is just a concrete tank. And then there's some pumps on the left side there. This is a section of a gravity filter water treatment plant. One thing to note is that when the architects give us these sections, that they actually show the bottom of footing, so the grade is actually, this is the sidewalk here, so this is grade, these are frost footings. But you see the clear well is primarily buried, but it is a 2-story building. And the architectural features on these can sort of be whatever you want, but probably some sort of brick or decorative masonry, possibly depending on, you know, could be precast wall panels, it could be, I've seen like metal siding on parts of it, so, but you'd fit it to like the city's sort of motif or the neighborhood. This is a site plan for water treatment. You see that the well 7 and 8 building is there, the raw water would go into the treatment plant. You've got a drive, and again, this is all, could be oriented differently, that kind of stuff. You could push the treatment plant back into the site more, but we're showing a driveway where you could sort of loop in and that sort of stuff, so if you're chemical deliveries, that sort of thing. You would have a backwash tank, which is just where you, when the filter gets plugged, you back flush it, and the gunk off the filters goes into a backwash tank. You let it settle, and then you reclaim the water back to the front of the filters. I probably have a standby generator. So pretty standard stuff.
Is the idea when the water leaves here then, it's potable, it goes right into it, right, it's ready?
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely. It's clean, treated drinking water at that point. And this site that, you know, technically, like you said, there's nothing preventing you from using water, but it is as clean as it's gonna be when it leaves. But free of iron and manganese, free of carbon dioxide.
So right now, so at this particular location, I mean, that's, we'll call it even almost beyond the edge of a town, you know, it's out in the, it's an island out in the township, basically. So you mentioned in the future with the, you know, let's say PFAS, and they need you to pre-treat. But that would require, right now, everything's just kind of coming into town and that's it, as far as existing pipes. But that would actually require us to run stuff all the way out there. Would it make more sense to centrally locate this?
So I think the PFAS, my prediction, 2 things. So you have PFAS at well 6 and a little bit at the other wells. I actually think the cheaper solution to, say, replacing or treating the PFAS in well 6 would be to add a 3rd well out here. Or add a well out here and don't treat the water from well 6 for PFAS. So PFAS treatment requires, like, typically people are treating with granular activated carbon. So you'd have a vessel that you could add on the backside of this, but I think that sending the water from well 6 all the way to this site wouldn't be, it would be cheaper to just drill the well.
Mm-hmm.
And we did look, and I think it's sort of 601. So we looked at it when we were originally looking at the treatment site near the test wells. There's a long stretch of water main from here that comes into town. You could use that as raw water main, meaning you could pump well 7 and 8 to a treatment plant site that was, you know, was actually on the east side of that large piece of land that we were looking at the test wells for. So there would be alternate locations that would be closer to well 6 or well 3, you know, just all of them. But you still, even at that site, I suspect, running the raw water main from well 3 to that other site might not be cost effective. It would be expensive.
Because right now, it just goes back to water to the current campus, so you'd have to, yeah.
And then if you had, part of what you run into is if you had a central site in town somewhere where you could build a water plant, you still have to get the water from well 7 and 8 to the water plant. So you sort of end up with the same problem, is it that raw water main, especially if you're gonna go through town with it.
It would be difficult to say we're gonna have a central hub that all wells would go to. You could maybe.
Well, if you did that, it would, how many acres how many wells could you put out where 7 and 8 is?
We own 10 acres.
I mean, we could looking on where 7 and 8 are currently. We've done some drilling there. We haven't got as good of results as we hoped when we did a couple extra holes a little further to the north, but I mean, there's a lot of pivots between town and 7 and 8, so there's water out there. So, I mean,
I think one of the things we've looked at too is we've always tried to find that clean water. You know, so looking on that 75 acres for just capacity of water that's similar to 7 and 8 is more likely than finding something that's gonna match in-town wells.
Right.
So if you already have a treatment plant out there and you put a straw in the ground and 400 gallons a minute, similar water makeup, you bring it into the treatment plant and treat it. Versus right now, we're being selective on trying to find that perfect well, which we can't find it anymore.
That would be my question. This proposed plant does not treat nitrates? So what would happen if, let's say we couldn't find additional water here, and the only water we could find, because it seems like nitrates are, if we look around us, they're an issue. So then we're SOL then, and we're looking at a nitrate plant as well?
if the only thing you could find was high in nitrates and not iron and manganese, then yeah.
So I've given this a little bit of thought too.
I'm sure you have.
So I think that, you know, a couple things you can do with the water plant. You can blend the water from, you know, well 7 and 8 with whatever, say you have a future well 9 that has nitrate, but maybe it's nitrate and iron manganese. But you're sort of, it's the nitrate that hangs you up. There's ways to remove nitrate, like your home softener is an ion exchange softener. It's a cation exchange softener. You start exchanging calcium and magnesium for sodium, the salt, regenerative salt, you know. Well, you can have an anion exchange softener that exchanges chloride for, in this case, it would be nitrate. But what you could do is you could add like a nitrate, like basically a softener, you know, to the backside of this, but it wouldn't necessarily have to treat all of the water. It would just have to treat enough to get your, you know, if you're blending or that sort of stuff, to get your nitrate below, you know, to a level that you were comfortable with. So you wouldn't have to treat all of the water at this water plant for nitrate. You'd already have the buildings and the pumping and that sort of stuff. So I think a lot of the infrastructure would be in place if you needed to add a nitrate removal step.
A little background on that within that. So the 2 test wells that we have on our existing 212 acres, so just east of the river, the estimate, rough estimate for production could be 300 to 400 gallons a minute. So we don't have any wells in place, we don't have any infrastructure there at all. 300 to 400 gallons a minute, maybe times the 2 wells that are there, plus we'd have to treat for nitrates. 7 and 8, we already have the wells in the ground, we know what the water is, we don't have PFAS there, we don't have nitrate issues. Those each are 500 gallons a minute. So just trying to weigh the 2 that are kind of the most obvious choices right now, that's kind of where you lean towards 7 and 8, because we already put the wells in the ground, they're already there. We have that pipe back into the city, so just so you guys are aware of kind of what the difference. I mean, we were really hoping the 212 that those nitrates weren't going to creep up as we test pumped, and unfortunately, in the one to the north when we test pumped it for the longer period, it crept up to 14, I think, milligrams per liter.
And we're not currently farming that, correct?
We've suspended the lease for 2026.
Yep.
And you run into, we've mentioned this already, but you run into the same issue with the other test wells. If you say, okay, I'm going to build a nitrate removal facility, and what happens if the next well has something else in it? And you sort of run into the same game, you know, where you're saying, you know, but like I said, an iron and manganese removal plant ends up being the tree treatment for a lot of this anyway, so not necessarily nitrate, but PFAS, it's helpful to have iron and manganese removal. Any other, you know, a lot of the contaminants, having iron and manganese removal is a helpful step.
Sure.
So.
Is operation costs considered in any of this?
We might have them. I didn't specifically put them in this presentation. I don't like get in trouble about telling people how many like additional hours somebody's gonna have to work or that kind of stuff. But these plants are not that labor intensive.
Is there a difference between operation costs for iron manganese, I can't say that, and the nitrates?
I would think that an iron manganese plant is less expensive. I mean, a lot of the chemicals, there's not really that much chemical usage at an iron and manganese plant. That you're already adding chlorine to your water. The aerator would take care of some of the chlorine demand. You probably have sodium permanganate, which is a chemical, a stronger oxidant for manganese. So I don't think your chemical costs would go up all that much. Your pumping costs are sort of like what they are, meaning for you to pump from a well to the top of a tower is the same for you to pump a well into a low head situation and then pump that into the tower. So those are, I mean, you're gonna maintain a building, so you have heat, electricity, and that sort of stuff in the building. And then there's a little bit of extra operator time for somebody like to do their rounds, but somebody's probably doing rounds anyway.
They do daily rounds in the water supply already, so stopping in places. Previous experience when I've helped at iron manganese removal plants, I mean, you're talking, usually you want to do testing, you'll determine how often you want to do that, kind of based on your backwash cycle. So I want to test influent water, I want to test the end of the filter, just to verify it's kind of in, yep, it looks good, we're removing what I want. Write down my chemical levels, so I know that I'm feeding roughly the same, that doesn't seem, so I mean, your rounds each day, maybe a half hour for one person to do that. Most of these, you have SCADA monitoring, so you can see them from afar, so it's plugged into your SCADA system. So operators can see it if they're not there. Some of the alarms, it'll send out alarms. Most of them will backwash based on whatever timing you want, so you can either do it based strictly on the time. Every 2 days, I want the backwash to go, or 2 weeks, or whatever ends up being, or you can do that differential in the filter itself, so you don't have to have an operator that comes and pushes the button and makes sure a backwash kind of thing. They're fairly self-operating in that way. And then, some basic cleaning things. I mean, as far as the general our operation stuff, it's not like the end of the world. Like, I'm not gonna come, like, I need 40 new guys now because
3.5.
no,
I'm kidding. Okay, so I thank you. That was just a question.
Yeah, no, and I think, one thing I would mention too about nitrate removal, or at least the option that we looked at, because it's the least expensive, it's a biological process. So you have this issue where you have to sort of keep bacteria alive and that sort of thing. So I think there's probably a little bit more risk in if the bacteria dies or, there's a little bit more risk of upset and maybe a little bit more hand-holding to keep everything operating correctly, where this is all sort of a chemical process.
Yep.
As long as you're adding chemical.
Yeah, really, nitrate removal is technically probably a newer technology. So yeah, I mean, it's like a wastewater plant, but you're treating water with those bugs instead of wastewater. So there's still that same opportunity that if something goes wrong and your bugs die, you gotta start fresh. So that could be an issue. Iron manganese removal, pretty rock solid. It's been around for a long time. Pretty good, been refined over time. So it's, I would say, generally a more
Mature
consistent
technology.
process that we.
And I mentioned that you can remove nitrate with like an anion exchange, essentially a softener. But if you're going to remove a significant amount of, if you're going to treat a significant amount of water through those softeners, it's the same as your home softener where you have to add salt. But on a municipal scale, if you were treating 700 gallons per minute a day of water, all of it going through an anion exchange softener, you're probably using tons of salt every day, and all that salt brine's going to go to your wastewater plant. It's expensive. It's probably not if you run into chloride discharge issues at your wastewater plant, meaning at some point all of that water, you're adding a lot of salt brine to your wastewater.
Sure.
It ultimately ends up in the river. Okay. So there's other ways to do it, but but none of them are ideal. So then, the estimated cost for a water treatment plant, we're estimating the cost at about 18 million, with then some contingency on that. But when you add contingency to the total construction cost that we're looking at is around 20 million. I will say that we are trying to be conservative, meaning that I'm fairly comfortable that the number's 20 million or less, not 20, and then it comes in at 28. So we're trying to be conservative because of what we've seen with this construction cost over the last 6 or 7 years. And then when you add the soft costs and engineering, that sort of thing in there, the total project cost is around 22 million. One thing to consider as far as next steps, the state drinking water revolving loan fund has this project priority list. If you want to apply for a drinking water revolving fund loan, you have to get on the project priority list. That comes out in March. The applications are due in March, but it doesn't obligate you to anything. So if you get on the list, it just gives you an option. It gives you an option to then later get on what's called the intended use plan. And even that doesn't, until you actually close on the loan, you're not actually obligated to anything. But one of the reasons to get on this project priority list is, I think when you go to look for bonding money or earmarks or that sort of thing, one of the questions they might ask is, well, are you on the project priority list? So I think it's helpful, even if you don't intend to do it right away or that sort of thing, or you want to pursue other bond money or grant money, it helps to get on the list.
So what is the population number? You said we're a little bit low, meaning biggest well goes down on the worst day type of thing.
Yep.
Current day, we're slightly below in that worst case scenario. Obviously, we just talked, in the previous presentation there, probably a decent potential of, bringing on, 100 people in an apartment, 100 families in an apartment, another, 50 in some houses. What is the point where we don't want to be at the gun, but we don't want to be too far ahead either, I guess. So what is the?
So I'll say that your existing population, which I don't know off the top of my head, is around 5,000.
Here over you.
So your existing population is using around 700,000 gallons of water per day on an average day. And I'm using 2020. I suspect we're close to that. So if you're going to add 1,000 people, you should figure that you're adding 20% of that number. So you're another,
0.9 instead of 0.7 or
0.15 higher or something like that on average day. So I think these numbers, you would need to add quite a few people before it really starts swinging, Actually, the numbers are on next to it, just look at this table. But, so they're saying if you go add like 450 people, like from 28 to 33, you're adding 0.06 billion gallons per day or 60,000 gallons per day to your average day, and it's probably, and about 160,000 gallons per day to your max day. So that's adding, like I said, 450 people. So if you added a 500 gallon per minute well, which is, or say you added a 700 gallon well, math is easier, that's 1 million gallons per day. That would buy you quite a few people. You can see that your max day between now and 2050 is not even projected to go up a whole 1 million gallons per day. So adding a well or two would buy you a long time.
what about a well or two, but more so talking about this plant here, I guess. When is, assuming the well or two would also come with the plant?
Well, you have 7 and 8 there already.
Mm-hmm.
So you're actually freeing up a well or two when you build the plant because you're not pumping 7 and 8 right now. Theoretically, like well 7 and 8 weren't intended to be run at the same time, but I suspect you could get, the listed value is 500 gallons per minute, but I suspect you could get 700 out of, one of them at a time. So you're likely freeing up 1 million gallons per day of well capacity by building the water treatment.
For the treatment project though, is that something we should really be considering in the next 5 to 10 years, or is this something that would make sense in the 10 to 20-year range? I guess that's maybe the golden question.
I'd say the next 5 years would be a really good idea, just given, you know, if our biggest well had some significant issue that we had to shut it down for a period of time, it's gonna definitely alter normal operation for people in Becker, especially in the summertime when we the grass that we have in sand. So, you know, I don't think you could push it out 10 to 20 years.
How long does it take to build a plant?
A year and a half, so probably figure it's a 2-year process if you have, you know, between design and actual construction, probably 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 years and a couple months, but it's.
I remember Monticello upgrading there, and it seemed like they were done the construction forever.
I think they're in the process of building a new water treatment plant right now. In fact, you know, some of the bonding and that sort of stuff and grant money, but they're between 5 and 10 million gallons per day, I think. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but it's like a $45 million building. So, and I don't remember if it's bid or not yet, but it's close. It's either under construction or it's this construction season.
So talking about that state list, I mean, we put it sounds like there's a priority, meaning, you know, if you are drastically under and it makes sense, you know, if you got somebody that needs a well, like right now, where their people aren't gonna be able to brush their teeth in the morning, then that's, you know, that needs to happen before, you know, we can't water our lawns. But what is the, how much of the, you know, I'm sure every town is gonna be on that list in some area. I guess, what is the realistic possibility? I mean, do we put our name on there just so we can tell the bonding people later on that our name's on there? Or, I mean, is that something we even have a shot at?
It depends on what I think you have a shot for sure at so primarily what the drinking water revolving fund loan is a loan program. So it's a low interest loan program. It's not.
Well, it's not a grant
portion of it, but I think the grant stuff is harder to get. I mean, it's just a grant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a loan, all right.
So it's essentially a loan. Some communities, if you're, you know, depending on your financial situation, don't want to go through like the hassle of the administrative requirements of saving 2% on your interest rate. Many communities, it is worthwhile. But like you said too, there's also a ranking process though. And interestingly, you mentioned a new well. They actually had a call with the health department today, and the health department is the one that does the ranking and that kind of thing. The public facilities authority is actually the bankers, but they don't fund growth. So the things that give you priority points are things like contaminants. Like if you have a primary contaminant exceedance, and I actually would, in the application, would try to reinforce the fact that if not for well 6 having primary contaminant exceedance, you would be less concerned about building the water treatment plant. So tie it back to a primary standard. The manganese helps a little bit. Just the fact that you're treating the water helps a little bit. But if you were just building an iron and manganese water treatment plant and didn't have any primary contaminant consideration, and depending on your household income levels, you may or may not actually score high enough to get the lower.
Oh, they take household income into account?
It is, but not necessarily negatively. It's one of those things where if you're below the median, you get extra points.
Yeah.
But if you're not, you don't get deducted points.
Or not?
No.
So right now we're at 1.5 million gallons. Let's say the plant's built. Can you remind me what the treatment capacity was?
The treatment capacity of the plant we're recommending 2 million gallons per day.
That's right.
And that would allow you to treat all of the water from either a well 7 or 8 and an additional well at least.
And the life of this plant would be how many years?
like 75 at least. I mean, I think there's, Minneapolis built a concrete gravity water treatment plant. I mean, they do more than just iron and magnesium. I mean, they're primarily a.
No, they use river water, don't they?
Yeah, and it's primarily a softening plant. But I think that plant was built in 1940, and they had no intention of tearing down their primary treatment. I mean, they've added on to it and that sort of thing, but, and it will need a rehab every 20 to 25 years, meaning your SCADA systems will be outdated. Your pumps are probably continuously, but you'll want to paint everything. You'll want to replace the filter media. So there will be rehabs every 20 or 25 years, but not like.
Not the structure.
No. One toured. I think that was built around 2000. It was early 2000s. And so it's 20 plus. Like, you'd never know it wasn't.
That was brand new when we walked in. And the nice thing is when we got there, an operator met us there, opened the door, turned the lights on. You know, that was just part of their rounds. So they're not there. We wouldn't propose to put a big office here. We wouldn't staff people there either. So we would look to try and absorb what we could our staff.
Any other questions for Chris? Do you have more?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Actually, I kind of do. Yeah. So, you know, you had the engineering costs in there, and typically, you know, we would do the engineering first. So would, if we were to do the engineering on it, how long would that engineering be good for before, you know, could we do the engineering, you know, and wait a year or two and then pull the trigger? Would we have to all this, you know, would 2 years be up too long? We gotta circle back and redo some of this engineering, or, and is that something that's just kinda, other than moving the numbers to adjust for inflation?
A little bit, you know, meaning I'm thinking things like SCADA, like, again, you would have to update it a little bit, but I would think it's fairly minor. None of the structure doesn't change,
It's a plant itself, the filter plant is gonna change a whole lot.
Other than your inflationary numbers or the SCADA software or whatever.
It would be fairly minor. Prepare plans, and then even if you fill it over 5 years or something like that, you know, it isn't, it's more like.
Well, why would we spend $2 million now and wait 5 years to do something else?
Yeah, well, I'm just, so in your numbers that you listed, you had the engineering and the construction admin as 2.4 million. How much of that would you say would be the pre-engineering, where if we were to look at, you know, thinking of something that we could start beforehand to get the engineering, you know, if it's $1 million or something, or what is the?
I would say realistically, the engineering design fee is something in the 6% range, so you're probably, if you were to do the complete design, it's probably $1 million.
Chris, you do this a lot of places. What have other communities done for conservation? Because I know, to me, it just seems like, and I have crappy grass, so of course I can say this, but, you know, to treat this water and pump it and throw it on our lawn, I get that. I get people want green grass, but, you know, I've hit on Phil and Chris, you know, over the last year that, is there a company that wants to come in? I've talked to so many people that would love to move to a sand point for irrigation. Can that make a difference in a city this size if we had 150 additional sand points? I'm just throwing it out there.
I do think that irrigation is like the low-hanging fruit in water conservation. I mean, it would help, you know. I don't know how to predict what, like, you know, if you really went after it aggressively, I think you could slow growth in your water usage. You might be able to claw back a little bit of water usage if you know, and then I can point you in directions both on, it's like sort of programs. I know the city of Woodbury has been, for various reasons, they have a whole slew of water issues, including PFAS. But they were gonna try to hold their water use steady in a growing community, but one thing they have is that they really have a lot of houses that water lawns. It's a new town. Every house has an irrigation system. So they're doing things like they have a smart irrigation controller program I think they might actually practically give the smart controllers, if they don't outright give the smart controllers to residents. The smart controllers can predict when it's going to rain, that sort of thing. They might even look at soil moisture and things like that. So if your lawn doesn't need the water, it doesn't just automatically at 2 in the morning or whatever.
If it's too windy, it won't let it water because it just rolls away and evaporates.
Yeah,
It takes weather, it takes the forecast, so it's connected to the internet, it takes the forecast and it says, well, it's predicted to rain in an hour, so I'm not gonna start the lawn system because the rain's coming anyway.
That means it's not gonna rain if you.
Yeah.
I've got a smart
You're
controller,
never wrong.
No.
Phil?
and it doesn't work very well.
Pull some data from Carly Johnson and Pleasant Valley Parks, just on an acreage basis versus our water consumption for irrigation purposes, and just extrapolate that over average lot size, and just say if you watered to the consistency that we did, so we can get you a number on 150 households or 200, what that number.
I can tell you what mine did. Having gone from irrigating before Sandpoint and after, it went down by 75%. I went from my entire water bill for a year was about $250 after I put my Sandpoint. It was closer to $1,000 before I had my Sandpoint in. So
we could look at that and correlate that to dollar gallons used,
Right.
and just look at that, and then we could look at the cost of us saying, okay, we could be a leader and show that program as well.
Just curious, what it would look like and if there is a company that's interested, because again, we're not telling people you can't water, but we're saying, that's a significant amount of money.
paid for my pump in a year.
Paid for your pump in a year, so, if that migrated 150 people off, it's something, and does that help on our grants and things like that to show that, hey, we're trying?
Not every place can get water with a sand point.
No, I know.
And then sometimes cities have rules about private wells and that kind of stuff. I suspect you could get past that.
Yeah, but we
allow
have a
them.
process with the correct controls on them, but I'd like to see us at least, regardless of what we're gonna do,
It's just hard because then you get wellhead protection issues, so
Yep.
again, where you're looking at that and where contamination comes from.
oh, for sure.
If you close one door, but you open up another one potentially.
Absolutely.
You just gotta be cautious on that.
Yep, and make sure we're putting the barometric control and everything else on it.
Then all
When I
this,
worked for the city of Elk River, for the municipal there, they did not wanna, open up all those wellheads essentially. Poke all those holes in the aquifer and then have all that, potential contaminant into your own drinking water source.
Yeah.
So, I understand the conservation piece, but that was, definitely something that they not want to go manage all those wellhead protections.
Right, well, we currently allow it, and there's a lot of people that have them down that don't have any of the, the stuff on it, so.
And you're not in a confined aquifer, meaning there's not a whole lot of protection from your aquifer as it stands, meaning that if somebody were to dump, contaminant on the ground, it's probably gonna get to your aquifer anyway, whereas like some of the communities, and I don't know for Alberta which wells are, but some of them have like confining layers, things that would block a contaminant from getting in, and then when you drill a hole through that confining layer, you're providing a conduit for contaminant to get out.
For sure.
well, I know the state will say, we can help reduce whatever by raising rates. I know that's always their first,
The top tier, you
yeah.
increase that, so put a little more, so maybe they'll be a little more conscious of how much water they put down or how green.
And we have, I didn't prepare, but we have the data already to say, okay, what does your peak day look like versus your average day, and that ratio sort of tells you how much you're getting, and how much opportunity then you have to say, because some of the new metros like Woodbury, they're using 4 times as much water on a peak day in the summer as they are on an average day. So they're just,
Well, and we base our sewer rates, based off of water usage in the winter, so I mean, that kind of gives us an idea too of what say, what does that increase into in the summer? Well, that's probably, we assume it's just as a blind calculation, it's most of it's irrigation, so.
All right, any other questions for Chris? Mr. Wilson, are you looking for something specific from us tonight?
Yeah, what, pressure you want me to run?
My question, and
They're running away.
I talked to Phil about this a little bit too, but I know we've done a lot of water exploration, but when you're looking at that price tag, what other options do we have? I know there's some things that probably aren't very palatable, but, and we need water. It's not like this is a luxury item, right? So, I mean, is there other tough discussions that we need to be having about what we're looking at?
One of the things that come to mind right away is the Hammer property. We've got a monitoring well out there. We haven't had to sit down with Penny Hammer. Since Tom's passing, her and her boys, that's their home property, their home farm. They don't want to, not interested in developing, they don't want to get rid of that. So it's a lever that we could maybe exercise. Maybe there's some sort of corner lot, there's maybe some sort of pumping arrangement. We could consider that. We could maybe get Penny to the table again. Very candid, great businesswoman, so respect what she has to say, but it's something that we could have another sit down there and talk about. We've looked at industrial areas as well, areas that have promising water, but 42-foot depth of the well. So again, wellhead in that area is poor, but the water quality over on the Potter property, Kosowski just put a new well in there. Again, water rates are higher over there, which is expected. Off of the MSP 120, the old demo property, nitrates were 28.
Wow.
In that area, ton of water, but very, very high nitrates. Farming over there. The other thing is over by the Hammer property, we're going to try and reach out to the Radickies. They own just across 24 on that corner there to see if we could explore that corner lot to see if there's could tell us joy go away, but you know us, we knock on doors and talk to people and get the final no, so.
Yeah, the other thing you gotta look at too is the cost of drilling, even just drilling the test wells. Let's say you do find, look how much money we spent putting the pipe in the ground for 7 and 8. I mean, you gotta get the water there. So you still gotta expense in getting the water to your facilities.
And that's the benefit on the Hammer property, or if you look at that Radicki property, you've got water main right there. You're 200 feet away, 400 feet away. So the cost there is great.
Just to tap into the existing.
Even if you had to overpay for the property, if you did a market valuation on it, they said, well, the highest best use is residential housing, and it should sell for X dollars an acre. It's farm ag right now, it's double the price, but in the picture scheme of things, you can buy a lot of land for that price and well development and stuff. So there are a few levers to pull. I think the biggest thing right now is you get this in front of you so you guys can think about it. And then in the next 30 days, you kind of say, okay, we'll hopefully have a little bit more information. And then what direction are you guys comfortable with us going? Because standing still isn't an option. 3 years is gonna fly by before we know it. And we gotta do something. So even if it's, that next step is, okay, this is the plan, this is a long-term plan. Even if we find another well in the ground and they can buy us 5 to 8 years of development, we still need to use 7 and 8 to treat it. And we get to that point, we start phasing that engineering and looking at what we can do for funding. Is it appropriation funds? Is it funding? What are our opportunities?
Yep. I have a question with all these solar panels. I mean, is that going to, I keep hearing that's gonna positively affect the water quality? Is there any?
Positively?
How's it gonna positively?
Well, that's what they say, because it's not getting farmed and we're not pumping millions and millions and millions of gallons for agriculture.
We don't know the timetable. So we did this with one of the property owners that recently acquired property. Well, he was saying Amazon is over there, and as we started talking through with their engineers and what they're seeing and looking at the water consumption that they need, there's no assurances that you could say high nitrates, you quit farming, it goes away in a year, 5 years, 12 years. There's nothing to say that. Is it groundwater produced? Is there something else that's producing naturally versus farming? So you don't know.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but
could.
It's most likely from farming though.
That's, the general assumption would be, because we all grew up with it, we think that that's probably the case, but there's no assurances that A, it is, and B, if it is, will it go away, and how fast will it dissipate? You just don't know that.
Right.
So, and a big risk to take with a lot of zeros behind it, you know?
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Well, and thinking about this too, you know, what, should we go down the route of the treatment plant? If it's a 75+ year building and the design's not likely to change, then it would be, once we know we're gonna do it, I think it'd be more advantageous at that point to do it quicker, because it's good, the technology's, we're not gonna have outdated technology or anything like that. The sooner you get it in, the cheaper it's gonna be. You know, if you throw 4 or 5% per year on it, I mean, 5 years, a 5-year wait, you're already 10-15% more for the same exact thing.
Chris, I think, has a number that would tell you.
COVID was bad for construction costs.
Yeah.
This same building was 10 million or less 7 or 8 years ago. So it's probably doubled. But again, it's not the only thing that construction costs. I mean, you see that across the board.
It was probably triple 3 years ago, came back down to double.
Well, so I think you're right, though, that the reality is once you've decided, once you're convinced that we need to do this, there's not a whole lot of incentive to wait. It's like, so it'll just get more expensive.
Yeah.
I really think you look at that, and it really, Chris, you can maybe, the Hammer property and potentially the Radke property, we've stuck so many holes in the ground. And we've tried to do it judiciously where we're spending money wisely, but we're running out of options. You know, we've tested any farm field that's close by that's got irrigated runs on it. We're trying to just grab those waters so we don't have to disturb the ground and get it. So I really think those are two options that we could look at. If there's no joy there, or we don't muscle our way into it a little bit, this is our option, and we have to start looking at that. And that's really when we're gonna sit down and say, okay, we need to do something.
Yep.
And where are we at?
Is there any further direction you and Chris need from tonight?
I don't think so. I think we can handle that, and I would say within 30 to 45 days, we'll try and set those meetings up. Maybe if one of you wants to sit down with the property owner, if we're running into.
Yeah, I'd love to go with you.
No, we would reach out in that regard.
We'll let you old decorate, sit down with that.
Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
Yeah, you heard from a longtime citizen earlier that apparently,
Dang, what's the post office, dude?
Why do I see Phil out there with a bucket catching irrigation water for testing?
he just takes a drink, and if he's alive tomorrow, it must have been okay.
Not doing the crappie, let's do it.
That irrigator's 2 years old, and it's a rust bucket.
Yeah.
Might have problems depending on which way you go.
I believe the Hammer well is like the second oldest. I wanna say that if that's the one, I remember that from the well study before. I mean, that was like a 1970 well, if I remember right.
So I can take you back to I think it was 2004 or 2005 when we first worked with Tom Hammer on that what's now a monitoring well, and we had an agreement in place, and it fell through for the cost of 5 lots when it was adamant we didn't need 5 lots on a ghost plat. Yeah, so that fell through, and we've been kicking ourselves ever since. So we're not going to relive that, but it's very, very frustrating because that water is, the makeup of that water is very similar to what we're seeing in our existing wells right now, and it's a very good producer. And we understand it's agriculture; they need to farm their wells very close to that as well, and it feeds that whole 100 acres, maybe 160 acres. I don't know if that waters the Morse property out there as well. So we understand that and want to be respectful of that, but really at that point, if we get to that, it's really a decision you guys want to make. If there's no agreement with the property owner, we go down the path that nobody likes to go down, or not. And if we don't, that's fine. Then we just know that. But our goal as staff is to exhaust every option, bring everything in front of you guys, so you see that we're checking every box. We're trying to be fiscally responsible, but we also know that if we're going to grow, we need to be able to primary need.
Yep. Do you two need any more on this?
No, I think we're there right now. We'll take this, and then we'll come back and revisit this, and then we'll start to plan that out. We'll have to get finance heavily involved with what directions we would go as far as what are our options, and if that's the way we land, what is that step? And it's a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. I would think we'd probably do something like that.
And if we need to be on this list by March, do we all have agreement we should get on this list? Is that something we can do?
We can work with Chris on.
Let's get on the list.
Yeah, we, put in an application for a grant for some infrastructure, and we didn't expect to get it, but we did,
Right.
so.
Watch them show up in April.
Ready? No. All right. Well, thank you all for that. Thank you, Chris and Phil. Appreciate it. Roundtable, anybody have anything?
I do not.
Industrial Park Roundtable. It was Thursday. I think we have 20 or so businesses coming, so looking forward to that.
That a lunch thing?
It's a 1:30 meet and greet. Sherburne State Bank is sponsoring the apps for that. And then a kind of a 2 o'clock kick off the program, finish up about 3:30. Jacob did a nice job of coming up with some feedback we're gonna gather from businesses. We'll give a little city update. The robotics team's gonna be there to give a little update. And then, we're gonna have all the businesses introduce themselves. Do a little discussion at the table so we can, what we're doing well, what we can improve on, anything else they need from us, and then we have a final survey they'll fill out. We'll get some updated contact info, cause that's been kind of interesting to see who's over there and who's renting what space now. And then we'll decide if it's something they wanna do each year, and we've had some good feedback so far, so. I don't think I have anything else.
Do we, let's see, Thursday morning, we got CMRP.
Yep.
Is, you attending that?
Yep.
Okay.
Wouldn't miss that exciting discussion for anything.
I was glad you said that.
Yep, I will be there. I'll be online or whatever. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:06. Thank you, everybody.